This is Ant Lyons from Your Property Network magazine, and in our video today, I'm talking to a young property investor who has achieved, it's a strange term with this, financial freedom, financial independence through property investing. And I always think I love my job because I get to talk to other property investors who and find out how they did it and what they've done. And I think it's really interesting when we talk to someone who's come into this at quite a young age and has had the motivation to do this and overcome some of the obstacles along the way. So my guest today was in a recent edition of Your Property Network magazine, where we went through all the case studies and everything in detail. But today is a bit of an overview. So a long introduction there, but welcome to our video call. Evie Stockford. So Evie, thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
And so how old are you now?
So I'm 22 at the moment.
Right, okay. I can barely remember 22. So several decades ago for me. But and you've been in property for 2 or 3 years now, is that right?
Yes. I started when I was 19, so it's just coming up to 3 years.
Okay, so getting into property at 19, if you go to a property networking event around the country, most of the people, and now we know they're not happening at the moment, but when they were, if you look around, most of the people probably going to be 20 or 30 years older than you. So what was the motivation to say, right, I want to do property now?
Yeah, of course. So basically, since I can remember, I've always wanted to own my own business, be self-employed. I just never knew what was right for me or where my passion laid. So property was actually a bit of an accident, how it came about. It wasn't that I was specifically looking for a property course or looking to get into property. It just happened to be at the right time. So like I was saying, I was looking for something to get out of my 9 to 5, but didn't know what. And so my partner found a free seminar course on Facebook with Paul Preston, and we just thought, why not? It was all about property investing and different strategies. I'd only ever heard of buy-to-lets myself, never heard of rent-to-rent and stuff like that. So when we went, it was very eye-opening. We could see what opportunities, with the amount of experience and amount of money that I'd already got, I could get into property. Because trying to get into a buy-to-let at 19, I was on basic salary, like I didn't have enough capital to put down a deposit. So the idea of rent to rent was fantastic because it only needed little capital to make quite a good cash flow. So I thought if I started that way and I could build up the cash flow, save, and then eventually get into buy-to-lets. So it all kind of happened that way. Like it was just something that I could see as a good business opportunity. It wasn't that I was specifically looking to get into property. It just all happened and aligned perfectly, really.
Yeah, okay. I know Paul really well. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah. I've got a huge amount of admiration for him. Actually, I love what he does. He's a really nice chap. Now, rent to rent's an interesting strategy because for a lot of people it appeals because it sounds like a bit get rich quick. You don't need a lot of money to start. You can build this income, but I think that is the real picture behind building rent to rent. I'm sure is a lot more work and effort than that. So So let's talk about that because what were some of the unique challenges that you had then in terms of building credibility with agents, and when you're talking to them and you haven't necessarily got a lot of property experience or no property experience? How do you overcome that?
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely the biggest obstacle that I had to face, was because obviously I was young, which made people, it puts people off slightly, I think, because people didn't necessarily believe in me, didn't understand what I was trying to achieve. So coming across to an estate agent or a landlord saying that I want to do rent to rent, which is firstly something probably they haven't heard of, and then also being a 19-year-old, it wasn't easy. So what I did was I just tried to, I researched things, like I specifically researched like HMOs in Oxford and what the requirements were. So then I had all of that knowledge. And so as soon as they asked me a question, I knew the answer to it, or I could expand to it, or I could even lead the conversation. So rather than me looking quite naive and not understanding, I came across as though I had more knowledge than I probably did, because I tried to hammer in on certain areas that I knew were quite specific to the Oxford rental market. So say when I've approached an estate agent, although I'd come across as young and inexperienced, there was little bits of knowledge that I had which kind of proved myself to them. And then once I got my first property over the line, that one I did have to pay 6 months up front, because I had obviously no referencing, I had no credibility. The business was obviously brand new. So that did cost 6 months rent up front, which obviously was a big investment, but then it was the best thing I've ever did, because it's helped me keep getting more and more houses. So then the second one was a lot easier than that first one. Because I could obviously say that I had the first house, I could show them the pictures, I could give them the reference from that landlord and that estate agent. So as soon as you have that kind of first property, it gives you that thing to fall back on and to kind of show this is what you've done, and it gives people the confidence to trust you. But yeah, I would say it's definitely not easy. You kind of have to, I don't know, present yourself as something different. You have to try it up your game to try and persuade them that you know what you are doing. And I think through that, it was kind of the knowledge that I'd got. So I'd gone through like YouTube, Facebook, magazines, books, like the Paul Preston seminar and stuff like that. And it just gave me that confidence of being able to go and approach estate agents and landlords, because I'd had other people's experiences and other people's knowledge.
So incredibly important at that first stage to demonstrate credibility in terms of knowledge, if not practical experience, then. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, definitely.
Okay. And so how long did it take you to, I guess, this sort of financial freedom thing, which, you know, it's always a difficult one to define, but I guess getting to the point where all living expenses, bills are covered, with a bit left over to enjoy some of the nicer things in life? What was the sort of timeline from starting out to getting to that stage?
Yeah, definitely. So I started in April 2019, and I quit my 9-to-5 job in October 2019. But as you say, like, financially free is obviously going to be different for everyone. I was 19 on quite a basic salary, so obviously I could get there slightly quicker than someone else potentially. And then, but in October 2019, although I had quit my 9-to-5, I then actually went part-time alongside the business. So although I could have afforded to go straight into just the business, I decided to work part-time because I didn't really need all of that time to be concentrated in the business. And I was saving for a house at the time as well. So I thought we'll just have the extra income side by side. And then in November 2020, it would have been, my partner and I moved to Dorset, and that's when we actually both now rely on the income from the business. So I would say November 2020 was at the proper time that I could say we were both financially then free.
Okay. I mean, it's no small achievement at all to create a business with an income supporting both of you within that time frame. And we, you know, that's everything that YPM magazine is about, you know. Outlining that. So, you know, huge achievement. How do you cope with the fact that you're down in Dorset now, lovely part of the world, you know, I love it down there myself. How do you cope with the sort of having your properties, you know, several hundred miles away, and remote management of that? Now you're not on the doorstep. So what have you had to do to make sure it runs properly? Definitely.
Yeah, it has proved tricky. It's definitely not as easy as when we both lived in Oxford, obviously. But what we've done is kind of, a lot of it is obviously managed through emails on your phone. So you can do that kind of anywhere. So what I've done is we've got just really good systems in place. So we've got fantastic contacts in Oxford. So say if there was a leak or something like that, all I need to know is which house it's in, what the problem is, and I've got the right contact to ring and they'll go and sort it out. And then in regard to the keys and stuff like that, at each property we have 2 lock boxes. So one's for the tenants or the guests, and then one's for management purposes. So rather than me having to be there to meet, say, the plumber or the electrician, they've got the management lockbox, which they can then get the keys and access the property. So everything runs quite smoothly. The only problem I say we have is when it's a very small, minor thing, like someone might want a lock on the bathroom door fixed, or I don't know, the dishwasher's broken, something that maybe myself and my partner would have usually have gone to look at. We are then obviously having to pay someone to do. So that is an extra expense, but obviously we knew that was going to happen when we moved. So I'd say it's definitely cheaper. When we were in Oxford, we could go and do the minor things ourselves. But it is definitely possible running it remotely.
Okay. And what about viewings and, if you have a room become vacant, and how do you manage that element of it?
Yeah, definitely. So that bit I would say is the worst part of it, actually, because I'm very much like to do the viewings. I like to get the feel of each tenant, the people who are viewing, and stuff like that. So that definitely was the hardest thing to let go of. And when I'm in Oxford, if I can, I will still try and do viewings. But we have two people. They're not employed by us, but they are happy to help out as and when needed, and they do the viewings for us, which does work well. But that is definitely one of the points that I definitely do miss having that complete control of. And it definitely becomes quite tricky trying to be that middleman, trying to arrange the viewings with two different people. So yeah, that is quite tricky, but it does work.
Okay, and you mentioned tenants and guests earlier on, because your portfolio is split between sort of rent-to-rent HMOs and tenants in there and sharing a house, and rent to SA, so service accommodation, short-term lets, Airbnb bookings, that sort of thing. So how important is it, do you think, particularly at the moment, to have the balance and have a mixed portfolio like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, more now than ever, it's shown how important that is, to have that multiple income stream from different areas, because with the HMOs, they've fared quite well over this period. Yes, we have had some tenants who have become redundant or been obviously put on furlough, and they've had to have payment plans, or we've had to obviously get new tenants. So it has been tricky, but it's been quite a constant cash flow. It hasn't really changed, hasn't really fluctuated much. Whereas obviously when you're looking at the SA side of things, that's taken a massive hit. And pretend we were just had SAs in the business, we definitely wouldn't be in the position we still are now, because we wouldn't have the financial security of the HMOs. So I would say it's definitely good to have the multiple streams of income and different strategies, because one minute your HMOs might do fantastically and your SAs aren't, and obviously vice versa. And it's good also because the SAs, as you would know, can really fluctuate. So obviously, say in the summer, they're really high, in the winter, they're lower. Whereas with the HMOs, as long as all of your tenants are paying, it's a constant cash flow. It may be less than the SAs, but at least it's constant, and you know where you stand. With the SAs, sometimes you don't always know where you stand by month to month.
Well, I mean, particularly in a global pandemic like this, where the hospitality sector has been hit arguably worse than any other. So very important to have those, that constant income stream. So,
definitely a balance.
When you look back at, sort of when you were 19 and just getting into this, what's been different to how you had imagined, or more difficult, or more or easier in many ways?
Yeah, I would say what it is a bit like we mentioned at the start. A lot of people sell it as the dream, the get rich quick, the passive income, and I think that is a bit of a lie. Like, I would say at the start, I thought that maybe it was going to be not easier, but not as time consuming. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world, but now I feel like I am obviously I don't know, it's not working 24/7, but I have to be accessible 24/7, I feel, at the moment. So it does consume your life slightly like that, which at the start I didn't really realise, because obviously, like I was saying, it is kind of sold to you differently. Not that I would change it, it's just something I would give people a heads up about, is it does change your life dramatically for the best.
I mean, that's that's the sort of reality check, I suppose. This is a business that we're creating. This isn't. Exactly. It is more passive. It's more passive income, I guess, than trading sort of time for money in terms of a job. And you're more in control. But it takes a lot of you, and I think sometimes it's people don't necessarily hear that message. I guess
exactly.
They don't see that side of it. So
yeah, no, that's definitely it. But apart from that, I would say it's definitely a fantastic way to get it if you do want a business and you do want it to be slightly passive, and I think it is a fantastic way to go. It's given me the opportunity to do many things, and now, especially starting so young, I hope to do this obviously for the rest of my working life, and it has given me that opportunity to, I don't know, not be sat at a computer 9 to 5 working for someone else. It's given me the opportunity, if I want to go out, I don't know, in the daytime and do something, I am able to do that. So it does open a lot of opportunities for you. which I say was a very positive thing from it.
And your kind of non-property friends, so the people you grew up with and stuff like that, have they, when you started out, did they sort of go, oh, look what Evie's doing now, she must be bonkers or whatever, and
Yeah.
and how and if so, have they had a sort of change of perception looking at what you've achieved so far?
Yeah, I would say my friends, I don't know, all of my friends that I grew up with that are non-property, they've always kind of supported the idea and the business. I've never had anyone really say, oh gosh, like that's not a good idea, or oh, what are you doing, you're crazy. So they've always been pretty supportive, and I think even like now, they've always praised like everything I do. Like when I was say in the YPN magazine, they were extremely proud and happy about that. So from the start, they've been supportive about it. I'd say my family were very hesitant at the start, because obviously they didn't want me to go at 19 to risk everything I'd already saved, and obviously done. They didn't want me to risk that. But now they know that obviously it is successful and it's doing well, and they obviously can see that I'm okay doing it, that they're okay now as well. So I would say everyone I know, my friends and family, have been supportive from the start.
Okay. And has that influenced any of them to start looking at property now, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my friends actually have contacted me asking how I got into it, how they could get into it, different Facebook groups to join or different courses to go on. So yeah, it's definitely inspired a few people to try and get started in property.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, I know in the actual article we go into all the case studies in depth, and we look at the kind of running costs and how much rent you had to pay up front, the cost of works on the properties, the cost of furnishing them, because we always go into this in depth in the details, but we don't do that in these interviews. What we encourage people to do is have a look at this, and if you think it's of interest, then go to yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/subscribe, and you can get your first copy of the magazine for free, and read about Evie's stories and many other people's in there. So
definitely.
It's brilliant for me to talk to someone who started so young in this, and you've obviously got decades ahead of you in property. Do you know, is the plan to just sort of grow the portfolio as it is, or is there sort of different things in property you want to get into?
Yeah, definitely. So I say rent to rent will always, I think it will always be there. I'll keep it going in the background. But kind of from this year to next year onwards, I would really like to start the buy-to-let portfolio and start building that up, because that's the main goal, just to own like loads of buy-to-lets in Oxford, basically. Like I just want a large portfolio in Oxford. And that is the main goal. So in the next kind of year to 2 years, that is what I would like to start, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing rent to rent. I'm still going to keep going on rent to rent, but maybe just focus a little bit more on getting a buy to let, researching that, because it's, again, that's something that's new to me. So talking to the people who've got buy to let, how they started, talking to mortgage advisors and stuff like that. That's kind of the direction I'd like to head in.
So why Oxford sort of specifically then? Because the property values are high, without a doubt. Is that part of the motivation, the kind of quality stock?
Yeah, I think it's basically, it's just kind of for personal reasons, I suppose, because where I was brought up in Oxford, I love Oxford and it's what I'm used to, I suppose. Yes, from a business point of view, maybe it's not the best place. It's a good place to invest, but your yield's not going to be as high as maybe if you'd invested up north or something like that. But for me, it's just kind of to have, I don't know, something I've always wanted to have them in Oxford. And yeah, so basically it's just only because that's where I've been brought up and stuff like that, and that's why I want them there.
And I guess long-term capital appreciation and all of that, and we always have the trade-off between yield and lower property values and capital appreciation with a lower
so. Like Oxford is a good place to invest if you can, so definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not looking at in down here in the West Country at the moment then?
Well, no, I'm not sure. We might, once we move out of our property at the moment, which is in Dorset, we might use this as an Airbnb. If we can afford to do that without selling. But no, at the moment, I haven't looked into doing even rent to rent down here. I think you can do fantastically. But I think what scares me is like, I think it would do fantastically over the summer, but I'm not quite sure on like the winter months and stuff like that. Whereas where I'm used to Oxford, it's quite all year round, where it is obviously a city. So it's trying to get that balance and trying, I suppose, not being too scared just to go for it. But I think it could do fantastically down here.
I mean, I think it's definitely something to be said as well of having a model, isn't there? And understanding your local market and knowing that this works and therefore, you know, repeating the model rather than constantly looking for chasing those silver pennies, they say, don't they? Of, you know, different stuff in different locations. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, it's been a total pleasure catching up with you this morning. It's amazing to see someone come into this so young and so enthusiastic and turn that enthusiasm into a business, a profit-making, a cash flow generating business. So it's a pleasure to talk to you. And so people are watching this on our YouTube channel or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, then you want to read the article in full and you want to get access to the YPN app and all those bits and pieces, get your first copy for free. It's just yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/subscribe. Evie's story is in there, as are many, many others, lots of people from lots of different backgrounds taking different strategies in property. We always believe that there's a way, no matter who you are and where you are, to find your niche in property. So Evie, it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.